We'd like to thank our sponsors for this week's drasha, Lee and Craig Oppenheim, marking the yortzeit of Craig's father, Yaakov ben Herschel, the 11th of Sivan, and Lee's mother, Chana Rezel bas Avram Alevi, on the 16th of Sivan. Thank you very much to both of you. Both neshamos should have alios, and surely both of your parents, their neshamos look down with much nachas upon you and your beautiful mishpacha, and they should just have continued nachas from all of you. Thank you very much. We read in this week's parsha of the mitzvah of Birchas Kohanim, the unique mitzvah that the Kohen has to participate in extending a blessing to the Jewish people. And there's a very, very interesting aspect of the mitzvah based on a wording in this week's parsha. So it says in the pasuk, Amor lahem, say to them, that this is the blessing that should be conveyed to the Jewish people. But the word amor is spelled in a complete way. Aleph, mem, vav, resh. The vav just creates the O sound. Many times in the Torah, when the O sound is supposed to be pronounced, there's just a vowel, or the tradition is you're supposed to pronounce it with a vowel, and there's not actually a vav present. But here it's spelled full, amor, with a vav in between the mem and the resh. And on that, Rashi brings down the very interesting medrash that from the fact that it's spelled malay with that vav, full, lo svarchem b'chipazon u'b'bahalus. The bracha should not be extended, the blessing should not be extended in a sense of a rush, elo b'kavana u'b'leiv shalem. When the Kohanim say the bracha, it should be with focus and full intent. And what we learn from the idea of full intent is the Kohen is supposed to extend the blessing, as we actually even say in the bracha the Kohen makes before he extends the blessing, ba'ahava, that the bracha is supposed to be extended to the Jewish people with a feeling of love. And that's a very unique thing to think about. Of course, we have a mitzvah to act kindly towards each other, but you'll be hard-pressed to find another mitzvah that specifically the mitzvah has to be done with a certain feeling, with a certain emotional sense. Most mitzvahs we say, you do it. Maybe it means you have a focus, an intention, but a feeling of love, that's very, very unique. And that's the nature, that's part of the nature of the mitzvah of Birchas Kohanim. And Rav Soloveitchik points out that we see there are various psukim in Tanakh that create the image that the Kohen is the one not only to serve in the Beis HaMikdash, not only to give the bracha, but the Kohen is the one to teach Torah. And Rav Soloveitchik just points out that it seems that this special spirit of blessing the Jewish people with love is also the ideal way with which we are to inspire others, whether we're Kohanim or not, but those who look up to us. And we all have people in our lives who look up to us. They might be our children, they might be our grandchildren, they might be our students, they might be our relatives, they might be our neighbors, they might be our friends. We all, thank God, we all hopefully have people that we look up to, and we all hopefully have people that look up to us. And Rav Soloveitchik suggests that the same way that this spirit of ava, of love, is essential for the Kohen in imparting the bracha, so too it's essential for the Kohen, and indeed all of us, in imparting Torah lessons. It's such an interesting thing to think about. If I were to ask you for a quick association of Aaron HaKohen, so certainly many people would say Kohen Gadol, he was the high priest. Many people would talk about aspects of the priesthood, serving at the Beis HaMikdash, bracha, whatever. But many, many of us, just one of the first things that come to mind would be the famous quote, Oev Esabrios U'Mekarvan LaTorah, that he was a person who loved other people, and through that love of other people, he brought them close to Torah, which is exactly what we're talking about. And I'd like to reflect for a few moments about some lessons, maybe a story, of the tremendous value of treating people with ava, with love. And hopefully we all have had someone in our lives who has been a role model to us in some way, who has related to us with love. And hopefully these images and words will hopefully evoke memories for all of us and inspire us that when we interact with others, it needs to be with a spirit of love. And to also remember, by the way, that we impact others all the time, whether we intend to or not. And if we try to imbue this spirit of love in our human interactions, we'll gain so much from the positive impact that we'll have made on others. First, just to share a very brief perspective, I was watching an interview the other day of a very successful Rosh Hashiva in Israel, and it was clear in the interview he was being extremely open and candid, and he shared that when he first opened his yeshiva, he had questions. He wasn't sure what's the best way to deal with this issue with the student, what's the best way to deal with that issue with the student. And he himself had a teacher from whom he had learned much, not only much material, but much about life. And he wanted to get this teacher's sense, feeling, advice as to how to handle this situation, how to handle that situation. But as can be imagined, his teacher was a very sought-out individual, is a very sought-out individual, and it took him a very hard time to actually get a hold of his teacher on the phone. And they had a conversation, and his teacher gave very helpful advice. But at the end of the conversation, the student, who himself now was a teacher, said to his mentor, there's no way I'll be able to do this every time I need some advice. What do you recommend I do? I'm new at this. There are going to be so many situations that I need guidance. Could you give me, maybe you have someone else you could recommend I talk to? Maybe you could give me some hidden phone number. What do you recommend I do? And the veteran teacher told the newer teacher, and obviously, take this story with a grain of salt. Obviously, there's a lot to be learned, experience, and gaining from the wisdom of others is always very important. But the veteran told the newcomer, said, you know what the key is? The key is just love your students. If you love your students, if you really, really care about them, then you'll figure out what you need to do. Again, I repeat, surely this mentor would not say you should never ask another person's advice, that you should never take courses. Surely not. But as a rule of thumb, if you really care about your student, you'll figure it out. It's an interesting idea. We were talking about Aaron HaKohen before. What's another famous quote about Aaron? Ohev shalom v'rodev shalom. He loved peace and he pursued peace. That's so interesting. That quote is so interesting to think about in the context of this story. Because since he loved peace, he really, really, really wanted people to have peace. Then not only was he motivated to pursue peace, but perhaps we could argue that he knew how to pursue peace. He knew what buttons to press. But the reason why that was so was because he so wanted it. It's interesting to think about. To build ourselves up to really, really care about other people. Really believe in them. But I would just like to share one more story. I actually, I confess to watching a certain podcast periodically, or a certain YouTube version of a podcast that I know at least one member of the show recently saw and sent an email to others encouraging them to watch it. So maybe for some of you this is a repeat, but I'll humbly say it's worth repeating. A beautiful, beautiful story that I recently was reminded of about Rav Aryeh Levine, Zichrono Livracha, the famous tzaddik of Yerushalayim. And actually, I recently heard the story retold by his grandson, who met the person in the story, and the individual in the story shared it with his grandson, with Rav Aryeh's grandson. And the story goes as follows. There was a certain individual who grew up in Rav Aryeh Levine's community, his shul perhaps, I don't remember. And Rav Aryeh was at his bris, Rav Aryeh was at his bar mitzvah, and this individual ultimately left observant Judaism. and he was walking down the street of Yerushalayim without a yarmulke, and from a distance, he saw Rabbi Aryeh Levine walking down the street. And whatever other issues he had remarkable respect and admiration for Rabbi Aryeh Levine, and he did not want Rabbi Aryeh Levine to see him without a yarmulke. So, he kind of took a side street, tried to avoid him, rushed a little bit, and wasn't successful. Rabbi Aryeh Levine caught up to him. And the first thing Rabbi Aryeh Levine asked him, again, just for those not aware of any other stories, it already gives you a picture. Rabbi Aryeh said to him, "Did I do something to offend you? Please, if I did anything to offend you, please forgive me." He said, "No, you've never done anything to offend me. Why would you think you did something to offend me?" He said, "Because I saw it looked like you were trying to avoid me, and I was worried when I saw that you were trying to avoid me. I was worried maybe because you were angry at me about something." So, when you have this person who's obviously not from, just from his dress, he's not from in Yerushalayim, and here you have this person who absolutely represents Frumkeit, and he sees that the person is trying to get away from him, and his immediate assumption is, "Oy vey, I hope I didn't offend the person in some way." That's already a beautiful, we could stop there, that's a beautiful story, but the story continues. So the person said, "No, not at all." So Rabbi Aryeh said, "But it looked like you were trying to avoid me. If I didn't offend you, why were you trying to avoid me?" He said, "I'll be very honest. I'm embarrassed that I'm not wearing a yarmulke. And I didn't want to have an encounter with you that I wasn't wearing a yarmulke." Rabbi Aryeh Levine said to him, "I'm a very short person. You're tall. I can't even see if you're wearing a yarmulke or not. But what I can see is I can see your neshama. I can see your soul. And believe you me, I know that you have a beautiful soul." And what can I tell you? I think that's the most amazing story. And you hear stories about people, great people, and you say to yourself, it's a really nice story, but what in the world does that have to do with me? I'm not a giant. I'm not a tzaddik. I'm just a regular person. You know something? In some way, we can all live that story. Because what that story means, maybe we don't have the piety of Rabbi Aryeh Levine. Maybe we don't have the insight of Rabbi Aryeh Levine. Maybe we don't even have the love of people that Rabbi Aryeh Levine had. But we can all at least work a little bit on not being so fixated on how a person looks, or what a person said, or how a person voted, or what a person did. Maybe, just maybe, we can try to look within the person's soul. And if we can't see within the person's soul, because we don't have that type of perspective, or don't think we have the insight to see within the person's soul, then you know what? Just take it as an assumption that there's a godliness within their soul. Because, my friends, there is. May we always merit to successfully reach out to all of the people in our lives. And we all hopefully have, it could be someone, it could be many people. May we have the merit to reach out to them with ava, reach out to them with love. May all of our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren have the merit to have people in their lives, teachers, role models, who truly love them and whose love they feel. And I just think about it. The bracha that Hashem, the words written in the Torah of the blessing that the Kohanim are to impart to the Jewish people, it's not enough to say those holy, holy words. The words have to be said with ava. Because if the bracha is given with love, it's a different bracha. May we merit that all of our encounters with everyone in Klal Yisrael and everyone in our lives be truly with ava. And in the merit of our being people of greater ava, may we all merit, may all of Klal Yisrael merit, everywhere in the world, and particularly in Israel, that we should only have peace and safety and good news. Have a wonderful Shabbos.